I'm not afraid of anybody. If you know anything about me, I'll talk to anybody. Any historian that wants to come on this podcast, any historian who doesn't want to come on this podcast, any film producer, director, star, anyone. I want everybody on this pod. I'll talk to anybody. If you've met me, you know there's really nobody I won't talk to. But I was a little timid today to talk to Alexis Coe, our guest today. If you know anything about Alexis, Alexis is a big deal. She is an American presidential historian. She's written 2 books so far. She's written Alice+Freda Forever, A Murder in Memphis. And she's also written You Never Forget Your First, a biography of George Washington. She is a presidential historian. She knows a shit ton about presidents. So we talked about a presidential movie. We talked about 1993's Dave. And we both went back and rewatched this film last couple of days. And it is amazing what 30 years will do to you watching this movie. It is a movie I think everybody loves, with Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver, a much younger Ving Rhames, much younger everybody, including a much younger Jason when he was watching it for the first time. This movie's such a blast. But, you know, when you go back and watch this movie now through the era of the Clinton presidency and the Trump presidency and the Obama presidency and the Biden presidency and the Bush presidencies, it's such a different movie. And we had so much fun talking about this movie, talking about Alexis's work, and I think everything else in between. This is a fucking awesome podcast, and I try not to curse too much more anymore, but goddamn, this is a fun one. So I hope you enjoy this. Sit back and relax. Dave is next on Historians in the Movies podcast. Alexis Coe, what's going on?
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm in New York. I'm in upstate New York. Everyone thinks I live in Brooklyn, I used to live in Brooklyn, but I now live near FDR's historic Hyde Park.
I had FDR's great-great-grandkids in my class when I used to teach in Florida.
How were they?
The weirdest thing. They were wonderful. They were the best kids. They were in 8th grade. They were the sweetest kids. They were twins. They still are twins as far as I know. And they were actually the best kids. But the weirdest thing was, like, when I was teaching second half of the U.S. survey to them, and I was like, okay, kids, and all the kids knew who he was, right? So who they were. And I was like, let's just talk about your great-grandpa now. It was just odd, but they were totally cool with it. And, like, they would sit there, like, just kind of with their pencil, just kind of do their little thing. They were adorable. So that's my FDR Hyde Park experience.
I went to a recent opening there of an exhibition, and a Roosevelt walks in with what is clearly a primary source and walks up to the president and asks, do you want to take a look at this? And we open it, and it's just like beautiful prints and letters, and it was just hanging out in their basement. It was like I created the scene in my head. You know, it's like a historian's fantasy, except it's not my guy. So it was sort of worthless for me.
It's not your guy yet. You have time. You have many books to write. Well, I want to get into are you going to be done writing books after this one that you're doing now? Or will there be, I don't want to assume there'll be others, because writing books is hard.
I've damned myself to this life. Yeah, no, I've really backed myself into a corner here. So I will be doing this until I can't do it anymore.
I'm so excited you said that, because now we can, like, really just rail in on Alexis' like thoughts on the profession, and like why I'm not really doing it. I don't know. Am I a historian anymore? I don't know. But you are. In fact, can I tell you the first time I saw your book?
Yes.
Was actually at my ex-wife's house. Like, I was already following you. She's like, I just got this book. I'm like, I don't know her, but I follow her. Sometimes I'll like what she says. And then I was talking to her tonight. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna talk to Alexis Coe tonight. She's like, oh, tell her I said hi. I was like, Christine says hi.
Hi, Christine.
So there you go. But I guess you get, like, stories of that, like, because I see your book everywhere when I go to, like, Barnes and Noble, and like I love going to bookstores. It's like a thing. It's like a happy place.
Especially now.
Do you get excited still?
Oh, yes. During the pandemic, I wrote a piece for Town and Country. They emailed me and, asked me, what do you miss the most? And I said, bookstores. And I really missed going into them just to commune with the shelves. And I miss libraries a lot for that reason. And I think that it's a really important exercise for me to do while I'm writing books. But bookstores, to feel the excitement and the energy of books that are new and not new, and how things remain on the shelf and how perspectives shift. I really feel like a bookstore captures that. And so I have to go into one. If I pass one, I have to go into them all the time, every day. I live in a village. There's one bookstore. I go into it 4 times a week, at least.
I love it. I found, so I'm like, we were talking before we started recording, like in this new town where I'm in Pueblo, I found there's a coffee shop that makes Cuban coffee. And it is owned by the same people who own the bar/used bookstore and the record player, the used record store. And I went over there the other day and I wiped them out of Jimmy Buffett albums because I was having a mood. And it's just like, there's this feeling when you go in a bookstore, especially used bookstores, they smell a certain way. And can you listen to books like on Audible and stuff like that at all? Is that a thing you can do? Or like, how do you ingest books?
I go through moods. If I'm into podcasts, I'm not listening to audiobooks. But when I'm writing a book, in the beginning, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and then I always shift to books because I want to revisit books that I've read, or it's a book that's kind of light and I'm not so sure that I really want to sit down and spend the time reading it, during those like reading with your eyes hours that are increasingly fleeting. Whenever I take a constitutional, I'm probably listening to a book, which is every day, unless I am just so tired and I need to be kind of pumped up, and then I listen to music. Or occasionally I try to listen to the world. Just occasionally, though.
Oh, that's fine, I guess. I'm hiking now, like everywhere in the woods, and I'm expecting to be on the news. Like you'll hear me about the news, like Kentucky man falls off cliff while not paying attention, or something along those lines. But like this, I kept saying when I was writing my disc, like I was like, you can't write this from an office. Like when I was writing about early Florida, I felt like I had to be out in it and smell it and see it and hear it. And I would listen to books in the mornings. But when do you have this problem? Like I would get really worried when I was writing that I would start to take on the writing styles and tone of the people I would be reading or listening to. You've got that. God bless you. I can't do it. It's
just like your earlier question, for better or worse, I am damned to my voice. I have always had darkly funny, detailed writing style. It's exhausting to me. It works in the end, but I can't really write in any other way. And it's how I am in the world. It's the way I am at dinner. It's the way I am at a bar. I think and I talk this way.
I like to think I've got my own voice, and I wonder how many puns I can put into my own writing. I was at some point in time, and I haven't. I'm in the book proposal stage right now. I'm so terrified to actually start doing what you're doing, like between my day job and HATM, and trying to find the time. Because writing, like, I was hoping maybe you could talk about the process of writing a book, like. With your first book or the one that you're currently doing, which I hope we can talk about today. Like
Washington was my second book.
Okay, talk to me.
This is a very funny thing that happened. So if you talk to people in New York, in the literary community, they would talk about Alice+Freda Forever, which was my first book, which was critically successful. So it was in the New Yorker. Which you never forget your first was not, which I'm not complaining about. I think it got a little bit of attention. But if you talk to a lot of people outside of that, they'll be surprised. They'll often refer to Washington as my first book. And I think people in the Washington world who didn't know me, because some people had gotten to know me over the years, were surprised and sort of didn't understand. But I had quite a reputation by then. I had a book and I wrote features and I was in Best American Essays and such. But I primarily write books, and I've been doing this since I left the New York Public Library, where I was a curator in the exhibitions department. And there I took on more writing. My boss liked my writing style. And we used to outsource a lot of things as far as exhibition panels and texts and catalogs. And at one point she said, but I like your writing better. I just want you to do it. And then she kept pressuring me every time I would bring her Alice+Freda, which was a story I found in grad school, to just write the book, just write the book, just take off time, write the book, just write the book. But the thing is, that job was amazing. My job was to mine the special collections for things to put on exhibition at the NYPL, which is the People's Palace. It's free. It gets a ton of visitors, 1 million visitors during the summer. You hear every single language. Every time I went to work, I walked the longest way possible to my office through the lions just to feel like I was in a movie. It was a dream. And so it felt like an absurd career move, which now sounds great in retrospect, right? Everything adds up. But I did. I took a leave. I left and I wrote Alice+Freda Forever, which I had been quietly working on for years. I will never write another book like that. I knew everything by the time I sat down to write it. But I still didn't think that I was going to be an independent historian or write another book. It just worked out that way. And I found very quickly, the thing I loved about my job at the NYPL was the freedom. The first year of an exhibition, I would be alone with my key to every special collections, with all the curators, having to take my meetings, having to show me all the special things they kept in their desk drawers. But I was alone, so I could just mess around. If I wanted to read guidebooks from New York City from the, late 19th, early 20th century for a week, I could, and I could call it work. So I thought that was the best. But I have found the greatest thing about success is it allows you to do the next thing you want to do. And that has been the story of the rest of my career. And at that point, I had started to conceive of the great project of my career. I had focused on political history. Alice+Freda was an aberration. And I knew I wanted to do something with presidential history and I wanted to diversify it. But I wasn't quite sure how yet. I love those books, but I wasn't quite sure how. And then I hosted this podcast at Audible, and I've worked in different mediums, but I always come back to books. And this book, actually, you talked about getting out when you're writing. When I proposed this book, it was during the pandemic. So again, not complaining, but my Washington tour was actually cut short by the pandemic. I was still on tour. I was told to stay.
You're allowed to complain.
I think I'm not, though.
No, you are. No. First of all, on this podcast, believe you, we keep the bar very fucking low. So you can absolutely complain. Kvetch is a word I like to use a lot, right? COVID changed everything.
It was a little bit of a bummer.
A little bit? Yeah.
It was a little bit of a bummer. I think it had just made the bestsellers list, and I was going to do something really cool. Drink. I was going to be on a show in LA, like a late night show. And then they're like, oh no, something's happening. And then the pandemic happened and I had a 6-month-old and, so it was a nightmare. And it was a nightmare for a lot of reasons, including I was still thinking about the next book. I had been in Washington land for a long time. I started that book in 2015, 2014, like right after Alice+Freda was published. And I was thinking about for me, these ideas come slowly and then all at once. And so I have spreadsheets, I have notes, and what feels right now. Is that what I thought it was? No, it's not. And the archives were closed. Very early on, as all my public events too. Everything, it didn't just pivot to digital because Zoom was not a word we knew yet. We didn't all have it on every device. So things were just canceled. And I really didn't know what was going to happen. I took one of those Substack deals, which I really did. I mean, I was thrilled about. I was absolutely thrilled to write at a very high frequency, which is not at all my jam. And I had been thinking about Kennedy, and I'd been thinking about a Kennedy book over the years, but I thought it would come later. Like I thought it was 1 to 2 books maybe away from that. Seems right, for your 50s.
Well, there's like that thing, right? Or at least for men, where it's like that. I see the meme go around that says like, well, by the time a man hits 35, he has to get really into barbecue and World War II.
Yes.
Right. So does the Kennedy thing happen when you hit your 50s? So are we? I'm a little bit older than you, so I'm like 4. I'm 4 years shy of 50.
You're not that much older, but
my son is into Kennedy.
I'm already an old man. I mean, I am. I do a bit of woodworking. I mowed my lawn today. I love World War II, quite obviously. In grad school, I focused on the interwar years, so I love that. Allows me to be in everything all the time as far as World War I and World War II. I love all those things, but. And early on, I think 2015, 2016, I had written a couple pieces about Kennedy, sort of doing my thing, finding the primary source that wasn't talked about, having a different perspective. And I kept seeing things. So it wasn't as if I didn't know I would end up there. I just thought it would come later. By the time I realized many archivists, I will say this, if I'm going to please anyone in this life, if there's anyone I want to impress, it's archivists and librarians. And I kept getting these emails around the Washington launch from some pretty key people over the years who I had worked with, whether it was for the Audible podcast, Presidents Are People Too, or on features or whatever, who kept saying, when are you going to do this for insert in the brackets? Which was very cool, but I'm still not totally sure what I'm going to do with Van Buren. But I was thinking about Kennedy, and there's a lot that's digitized, but I wasn't totally sure. And I talked to my agent about it. And I went through, by the way, this is something else I think is probably useful for people to know. My agent never takes my first proposal. Never. I've usually written like 3 or 4 proposals. He's broken my heart. We've fought. That You Never Forget Your First was the subject of my email I sent to him. And it was such an aggressive email. And I thought so much about it, which I don't really do that much. I don't think about how can I handle people? How can I sort of like set this up? And then the body said, because he had turned down the last 3 or something, you can't tell me that he was a general. I don't want to hear about the cherry tree. And it's quite obvious that he was the first president. What else do you have? And he wrote back, I'm listening. And that's where the conversation started. With Kennedy, there were things that were digitized, but the archivists weren't back in the library yet, I don't think, or they were just completely inundated. I remember I was just getting like pretty infrequent responses, which was unusual. So I talked to my agent a little bit about it. He's like, well, it's a Kennedy book. So, okay. He started sort of having some conversations with people. I'm still kind of in a vacuum because Washington's come out. I know it's done well. I know it's gotten a lot of attention, but I'm not quite sure how much swagger I can have, in the realm. This is what I've learned. So I write this somewhat bonkers proposal. It's the same length. It has the same, divisions as a normal proposal, overview, synopsis, biography, comp titles, etc. But it's just questions. It's a bunch of primary sources that are digitized. It's what's been said about it. So I'm demonstrating that I know. I'm familiar with JFK and particularly young JFK, and that I understand how everything is in conversation. So I'm doing these I'm doing some backflips because what I'm not doing is talking about what I found. I'm talking about what I think I can find and what I think is off. Just what I smell is off, because that's definitely something that happens to me. And I think it's something that happens to us all. It's like detective work, and you sleuth it out. When you're right, it feels like, oh yeah, I knew this all along. But when you're not, it's just like, well, that was 2 months of my life.
Oh my God.
I think that, these are shared experiences, scars. I can't really say learning experiences because they happen all the time. I write this proposal. I send it to my agent. He likes it, which is unusual. I mean, I've gone through a few already. I published one of them, Jane Grant, who was the co-founder of The New Yorker, who was just completely written out of the history. And actually 2 women from reading it on Study Mary Kill are writing books on her. And that was I said, take this, here's like 20 pages, use it as a starting point and do something with it. It's just not right for me right now. And I wrote this proposal, and then my agent, now I'm going to brag, my agent sent it out, and I had 15 meetings, which is when I really understood the impact of Washington, because they talked about kind of trying to find the next Washington book, that they had a bunch of proposals from, the next Alexis Coe. And that, I think the first time I heard the next Alexis Coe, I thought, oh, like that's something that's usually said about someone else. And
no, I remember the first time someone called me that, I was like, actually, I just mowed the lawn. So go on. I'm sorry.
No, it's a funny thing, usually, and then they all bid. It went to auction. First book did not go to auction. Second book went to auction, but like 2 rounds, two or 3 people. This one, they all bid. And what was interesting is they all came in kind of at the same, and it was one round, which I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, wow. Final bids, first round. And they came in with one. And then it turns out that's not true. There was a second round and just the final people. But it was basically like one house came quite a bit higher. And then I had this embarrassment of riches where I had always wanted to be published by Knopf and FSG and, all those places. Since college, you recognize those imprints, it's fancy.
Mm-hmm.
I had to decide, do I go there or do I go to Crown? And Crown publishes all the big presidential biographies. I was at Penguin Random House before, but now I'm in a different imprint. And I decided that I was me, and that I had done what I could do for presidential history, and that would continue with the next book. But it would be really nice to have an imprint that knew what they were doing with the book, that knew what they were doing with presidential history. Viking publishes like Nathaniel Philbrick and people like that, but I feel I'm different. I'm a presidential historian, and so I wanted to lean into that. And so far, so good. I mean, I'm pretty late, but they seem excited.
How would you say that you're late? I don't
contractually.
well, all right, well, fine. But what's a deadline? That time is a construct. It's fine,
paycheck.
right?
That's what a deadline is.
Okay, well, that's fair. That's a better argument one could make. So, I have successfully avoided all of that by choosing to not publish. So, I don't have. I'm actually gonna go down the Prince and Pauper route, where I'll choose the latter of the two. I'll be Pauper one day. It'll be a self-biography, an autobiography, as you will. So, all right. I want to ask you about more books you want to do. And we are kind of famous on this pod now for like not talking about the movie.
Oh, I was just going to say, what about the movie?
Are we going to talk about whatever? We'll talk about this president. We'll talk about President Dave. Or he's not president. He's Dave Kovac. And then Kevin Kline takes over the presidency. Mm-hmm. So we went back and forth for ultimately settling this. And I started telling people that we were going to do this pod. And to a person, every single person was like, "Oh my God, I love that movie.
I love it."
I watched it earlier today.
I watched it last night.
It's so good.
It's so good. So first, I just want to say that whoever had claimed the American president, never come at me for a blurb, because I wanted that movie. That is a movie I think about. I've written about it. Sidney Allen Wade for me was a role model. Sidney Allen Wade and like Baby from Dirty Dancing. If I had to, name my role models growing up. Dave, however, and when you suggested as an alternate to placate me, I thought, fine, I get it.
We can still talk about American president. We can talk about Sidney Allen.
Listen,
because we have to talk about Warren Beatty today, so we might as well talk about Sidney Allen Wade. But go on.
No, now we're talking. We can talk about Laura Linney.
Fine.
As it turns out, is the Kevin Bacon of movies about presidents. She was. And I want to play that game later. But I saw Dave as a kid. I was like, when did it come out? 93?
Yeah, that movie is almost old enough to be into World War II.
I was barely double digits, but somehow I saw it. I'd also seen Dirty Dancing. I'll bring that up with my mother.
Okay, we have a Dirty Dancing pod coming up because I've seen Dirty Dancing in the theaters no less than 10 times because every time it comes up, like every like 5th year anniversary or whatever, Baby doesn't go in a corner, but Jason goes to the theater because I am all about that freaking movie.
I love it.
I love Patrick Swayze. Knows no bounds.
It was filmed around me, and my poor lovely older brother can do the lift and the whole dance, really, the whole finale dance, because he watched it so many times with me.
Okay, I can do the lift. I can't do the dance, but that's
he does a good impression. Like he does this sort of like Patrick Swayze on the stage, and then I sort of shimmy up. It's a little weird.
Does he do the look back, like when he jumps down? They kind of do the slow thing, and he jumps down from the stage, and he kind of does the walking up the way, and then he kind of look. Boy, I'm serious.
He does a little bounce. I mean, now he's my older brother. He's not that much older, but I joke that he shouldn't do the lift anymore.
He's going to hurt himself. He's gonna throw his back out.
Yeah.
He's going to have a JFK-esque back injury at some point in time.
Yeah.
So, he's going to have the weak back. I don't know.
I don't need that on my conscience.
I'll take it. Like Alexis's brother. Keep going. It's fine. If you're out there, do some squats, do some deadlifts. All right. So I placated you.
Yes, you placated me, but then I was excited.
Because everyone loves this movie.
Yes. Kevin Kline.
Who doesn't love Kevin? Is this your favorite Kevin Kline movie?
I forgot he existed until we talked about this. And I forgot that I do love him. But sure, I think we have to establish this, though. I think this is really important. I have zero standards when it comes to historical dramas. I will watch anything. I like the good ones, and then there's good, bad, and then there's bad. Sometimes with like if it's about Rome, I have a little less patience. But American history or, the colonial overlord, I will take just about anything. I really, really like it. I watched Turn when I was writing Washington maybe 17 times.
For realsies.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Like I watched Turn just a little. I never made it all the way through, but I mean, I've got the attention span of my 11-year-old. So
it's good, bad.
I can. Yeah, it's okay. Good, bad's fun.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's the founding film of this whole HATM nonsense for 5 years now is National Treasure.
Oh, wow. Come on. We watched that in grad school. That was great.
Everyone loves that movie.
It was so good.
How have they not made a National Treasure 3? Because those movies have made money and they're fun.
They're so fun. And everyone loves them. Historians love them. It's exactly what we do, obviously.
And they've got a president in the second one, Bruce Greenwood, who is awesome. Give me him. Oh, man. You've seen 13 Days. I
have. And you also, thank you, because you got me thinking about this angle. I'm a fellow at New America, where I'm working on a project called How Should a President Be? And I'm thinking about it, and I'm having all these public conversations, and most of them are general, but some are on specific things. And I am doing some things with the arts. I mentioned to you earlier that someone in my cohort does like spoken word poetry. So when I was done giving a presentation, he just summarized it, but you really haven't heard things like the founding hypocrisy until you've heard it in a poem. Really was,
I'm gonna have to go check this
it was
out.
Really kind of amazing. But I hadn't thought about thinking about the qualities of president through dramatic representations. And now I'm 100% going to do it. It's going to be one of the talks. I just haven't figured out how yet, because I had this thought yesterday.
Well, first of all, you're welcome for that. So when, you haven't forgotten your 46th or whatever comes out, like that'll be, and you talk about films. Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a whole series of, movies where there's no shortage of films where we see presidents. They're just usually not the same. They're not usually not the main character. Oftentimes you'll see them as like the guy that they go and talk to, like in Armageddon, or it's like the world's going to explode. Well, how bad is it going to explode? What's this going to do to my poll numbers? It's going to be bad, kind of thing,
Yeah, like Mars Attacks or something, or it's meant to be. It's meant to like speak to gender roles or something. But it's just like biographies, right? It's the same guys. Mm-hmm. You've got a little bit of FDR, but it's mostly Lincoln, and a little bit of Washington, but not so much, because he isn't. As Sarah Giorgini once said, he's a little vanilla. It's like, how dare you? This was like 2018. I was in the thick of it.
Angry.
which is really funny. And it's, she spends her days with the Addams, so she should just be kind to the rest of us.
She should, but that's not what Sarah does.
That's not who she
jam.
is. And she's fundamentally the kindest, but she is, she's just like me. She's just got like a dark heart. It's great.
That's if you don't know Sarah Georgini, you're listening to this, first of all, go buy her book. But also she's awesome.
Yes.
And like you're saying, just evil and dark.
She's so funny. You just don't expect it. But what's great about Dave. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, aside, I've ranked C-SPAN style them in my head, the presidents for movies, and I think Morgan Freeman is at the top. Although I love how it's never addressed that he's a man of color. That's my favorite part.
Right.
Why it goes without saying. Who needs to comment on such things? Because audiences don't see color. But this movie has no famous president, has no sort of, it's not like a walk-on role. This is about a president, and he's not impersonating anyone. Like the thing about the film that shall not be named, The American President, is you've got some different vibes there. There's influence. You see and also President Shepard is surrounded by really earnest do-gooders. It's like West Wing-ish in inspiration, whereas Dave is like, these schmucks, these are the people who it's like it's worse than it's like Rumsfeld and Cheney at an 11 at all times.
Yeah. I was looking at the casting on this film. Of course, we get Kevin Kline. I was looking at the people who turned this role down, one of which was Warren Beatty. So there's your Annette Bening connection to this film. And then Kevin Costner turned the role down. And I don't know that this movie would have been as good and Kevin Kline brings a warmth to this film that I don't know that other actors would have done.
Absolutely. He is a little bit goofy in a way that they are not. And that's essential. The fish thing. And he has this warmth. He's like a predecessor to Obama. He enjoys the athletic performance of being a president. He is pretty serious about, throwing the opening pitch at insert sports team's name.
The Orioles in Baltimore.
I don't see sports.
I do. I see sports. I'm literally wearing a sports ball cap right now.
It's true.
I am, but
I only wear one hat and it says books.
I had to choose actually tonight before we got on because I
you're a hat guy.
Fly fishing hat.
Yeah.
Yeah. My hair is messy guy. I just got back from the dog park, so I had to wear a hat because there's no reason to wear a hat in my house. There is no sun coming anywhere from the sun is going down outside here in Colorado. There's no reason to wear a hat other than my hat. I look like dog shit right now. So that's why hat right now. So, and yeah, I'm a hat guy. I've got like a billion hats. That's kind of my jam, but we don't see Kevin.
We don't see him he may be wearing a hat. He's maybe wearing a hat, but he's wearing casual clothes. Okay. Here's the thing though, rewatching it, granted, again, I was a child when I watched it the first time, but I do not remember this ending. And the whole thing is totally implausible and undemocratic. It's totally implausible. It's totally undemocratic. It is, considering the insurrection and the events of recent history, such flagrantly unconstitutional behavior and inclinations, and just like really like evil. We're going to set people up and they're going to die, and it's not. That wasn't fun. It was a little too real. Whereas the ending, Dave, he's going to run for city council, and Sigourney Weaver. We haven't even gotten there. Sigourney Weaver comes in, like they're about to rekindle their romance, and I'm like, this can't work. People are going to find out. What are you doing? Unless he's going to write a tell-all. So in some ways what I'm saying is it both didn't make sense unless there's a part 2, which right now I'm actually pretty down for.
Dave 2, the Davening?
Yeah.
Something along the lines?
Yeah. The Imperial Davency.
Oh, I like this. Well, here's the thing, right? So watching this movie, right? I also a child at the 93. How old am I? I'm like 17. Yeah. I'm 17 when this movie comes out. And I remember coming out and I remember seeing it. And the interesting about this film, when you look at it, is that, and I was talking to Sarah Georgini about this last night, and she pointed this out. She was like, it just tells the story of like, if you look at the way it's trying to talk about the presidency in 1993, I don't know that we can talk about the presidency in 2023. I think the last 30 years, and you've got this, it kicks off really with the president having an affair with a White House staffer.
Laura Linney.
Right. But immediately before the Clinton administration.
Oh, and she's so young in it. When I saw, I was like, is that Laura Linney? She's a child. It's very Kennedy. Kennedy had an affair with a 19-year-old too named Mimi Alford. And her memoir is so harrowing. It's not even, I stop in 1957, but I have to.
Oh my God.
It's like the interwar years, like I have to read around. And so I read a lot about the presidency. I read a lot to forget a lot. And she'll say, because she's cognizant of being, at least she was, I think she's still alive. She was alive and she's aware of the world we live in. And she writes in the preface, like, my daughters kept saying this was date rape. This was date rape. And this was non-consensual. And she kept saying, no, I see why you say that. But for me, it was real. For me, it was this. For me, it was that. And it's so awful to read because you see how this ruined her whole life. Her fiance, who she was dating at the time, found out, or sort of towards the end of the affair, found out and like kind of also date raped her to exact revenge. And they had a terrible marriage. And the reason I agree with her daughters, and I agree with her daughters that it sounds really, really, I don't want to deny Mimi Alford her experience and her impression of it I just know he didn't kiss her once on the lips. They had an affair for like
what?
Almost 2 years, and he didn't kiss her on the lips. Yeah. For the people listening at home, you're just seeing we're making bad faces. We're not happy. No,
I'm not. Like, kissing is like the ultimate sign of love and affection and sexiness, and
yeah,
that's an integral part of any kind of physical relationship. And without that, it's just cold and mechanical and scheming. It's an extraction. It's a sexual extraction, is what it feels like.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know anything about this relationship. Other than what you've told me, but
it gets worse. I mean, there are like better, there are, like any relationship, there are parts that she talks about warmly and remembers in a way that is, I'm glad that she has those memories. And it's intoxicating. I have sort of purposely stayed away from DC. Everyone's so polite, but they're really doing terrible things and they're all being really chummy about it. People you think do not sit on a dais together are sitting right next to each other, backslapping. It's something I can't do. Anyone who's seen me on Twitter knows this is impossible for me. Although I do like to get dressed up and go to a party. It's nice. It's fun. I live in a village. It's exciting. But otherwise, I'll skip it. But yes, you see that. And you see glimpses of it in Dave in a way that you can't have in a movie now so casually. Like, you can't just have they never call her an intern. Right? It's just, they say another young woman.
Right.
You can't have that.
You can't have that post-Clinton. You can't have that post. I mean, with Trump and his sexual assaults. And one of the things I want to ask you about is if you try to make this film in 2023, what does this movie even look like? Because I think it looks radically different. I don't even know.
That's alarming.
I don't even know that you can.
Mm-mm. I don't think you could. You could maybe make it before the Trump presidency changed so much. I think you could do it before, but you can't do it now.
No. Well, we should probably get into the whole, attempted coup by the chief of staff.
Yes.
And head speechwriter. I mean, not that coups are part of our daily dialogue, but yeah, I mean, this movie feels so eerily foretelling, or it's like it's forecasting all of these weird things that are going to happen in the future. 25th, these questions over 25th Amendment. We had all these questions during the Trump presidency. Is this guy fit for office? Can we kick in 25th Amendment? Then, of course, we have the January 6th coup attempt, and also, look, we go into this movie. Here's the question. How do we feel about Dave, who is a willing participant?
He is. And
in this attempt,
you can say it first.
He goes along with it.
that he was a little bit, you could say, okay, he was bamboozled, right? He thought he was just doing, he didn't understand that he was relieving the president so that he may go sleep with Laura Linney, who is basically 19. And then he's going to remain in the presidency because the president has a stroke while having sex on this woman, to this woman, it looked like. And
on the floor.
And like, you know, it takes her a second to figure out he's dead. Let's put it that way.
A little bit.
It's, you know, it doesn't look like a good time for everyone, but it doesn't look awful. I should say it doesn't look awful. It doesn't look like she's really looking forward to it. Then he's president and he doesn't quite realize they're so evil. At first, it's just like, this is how a president does things. And they're training him. By the way, you'd have to get more people in on this, particularly it couldn't happen right now because everything is a national security crisis in the presidency and it buffets an agenda, right? You're just like buffeted. Nothing gets done. If you think about it now, Biden's presidency is kind of a miracle. He, you know, is on track to be the most progressive president we've had and lots of accomplishments considering Ukraine and all these other things, COVID, vaccines, all of it.
Why does no one seem to understand this, Alexis? Because, you know, I talk to folks, I'm like, it's maybe the most successful first-term presidency since, FDR?
Because this is what I'm trying to understand in New America. Because, you know, he could cure cancer and people wouldn't give him a break.
Liberal education, cancer killing.
Yeah. I think,
I don't know.
It has to do with the Republican Party more than anything else. And it has to do with little enthusiasm for the candidates for the presidents, since they're both presidents, it looks like, at least for now. That's a bonkers situation. I don't even know how to address that. But back to Dave. So he's getting this tour.
Back to Dave.
He's getting this tour of, you know, like how the executive branch works. And so the chief of staff, the speechwriter, all these really important people are taking their whole day to do this. Mm-hmm. You would definitely put a body man on this. You'd have someone, a trusted secretaries will go down with presidents.
Oh yeah.
I blame them for a lot of gaps in my work.
Really?
The rest are going to fuck up. Oh, can we swear? Can we swear?
Oh, we can fucking swear. Okay. Absolutely.
All right. So the rest of them are definitely going to fuck up. You know, they're going to write a letter. They're going to tell a wife, a daughter, someone's going to know. A ne'er-do son. Like, the presidential history is John Quincy Adams and Beau Biden. Those are like the exceptions to the sons. The rest of them are large adult sons who just cause problems. And so there would be a son somewhere. Someone would say something. So they're telling him all these things and he's like, cool, yeah, I'm getting this, whatever. He gets a little excited. But then very quickly he learns that they're evil because, of course, the thing that always happens in relationships happens. A budget crisis. Mm-hmm. I don't think that was my best joke, but I'm going to keep going with it. So
I like it. Go for it.
The budget crisis happens and then he's polling really. He takes all these he's just being normal. He's being kind of fun, like Obama. He's enjoying things and he's polling really well. I do remember
he gets a montage,
and they say things like the numbers they toss out are also. I've never heard of these numbers. I've never heard of
85% with single women.
Oh my god, it was 84% with single working mothers or something. He was polling. They don't have numbers that high.
No,
never. It was amazing though. But he was just like, and that's the thing. The presidency is not fun, but it's not. It was also nice not to see it treated like something they don't really want once they're in it. Like it's not something that they're enjoying. I didn't really watch Scandal, But when I see clips on the internet of some hot scene between the president and Kerry Washington, he's always like, you think I wouldn't leave all this for you? And he's like in the Oval. There's a portrait of Washington. And I'm like, sure. I believe that.
For the record, I would absolutely leave all of that for Kerry Washington. Yeah, with no hesitation.
If you are the leader of the free world, I think you can have both. And if you can't have both in the Oval, I feel like you can't have her outside of it. Like, you're probably going to mess it up anyway, so you might as well be the president.
That's actually fair, because one of the things I wanted to do while we were talking today was actually announce my candidacy. So I'm going to run.
Why not? Seriously.
Why that's going to be the campaign motto. So why not? Seriously. So
why not? I mean, I think so. If Trump has shown us anything, it's that truly anyone can be president. But it's terrifying when the thing that made Dave okay, because we should say he had some experience. I don't want to deny him his experience. He had impersonated the president.
Sure.
At car dealerships.
Yes. I used to sell cars. I know what that's like.
My grandfather did. Other openings. It's a certain kind. He was not. He didn't do quite a 4 seasons landscaping kind of thing. He was above that, but he definitely he could pass as presidential, if not like a little bit goofy, right? But he had no experience. But he was innately good. He was innately good.
Oh, that was the thing. Well, look at how do we see him when what does Dave do when we're first introduced? He finds people jobs. So I mean, that's ultimately the big
a lot
thing,
of women
right? He's
too,
the head of a
right?
temp agency.
Yeah.
Knows them by name, Alexis. Knows them all by name.
And he has nice friends because of course it's going to be a callback, but he makes his friend hire like 5 women in like a 600-foot office.
See, this is where the Daviding is going to go really bad, because what's going to happen is Charles Grodin character is actually going to go broke from hiring all these people that Dave forced onto him, and then start a revenge campaign to smear Dave and say, I know what happened the whole time. So I think ultimately Dave's goodness is going to get the worst of him.
But he's low-key a genius, because he is running this quiet little temp agency, so we think, but he's also got a job outside of it as this, presidential impersonator. He can also, though, when push comes to shove, fix the federal budget. He can solve any crisis. He can fix a marriage that is dead in the water.
Yeah, we should talk about the Kevin Kline Sigourney Weaver.
How have we not talked about Sigourney Weaver? Also, she has short hair. I just want to point that out. That's a really, really few first ladies get away with that. That also, I thought, this is like the worst part of Turn. This is not tracking.
Do you know why she has short hair in this film?
Wait.
She had just...
I didn't read any. What did she film? What was like her big supernatural?
I'm making fingers.
She's just right fingers now in the air. What does this mean?
I am trying to charade you to the...
What? I'm not kidding. What was it?
Alien 3. She had like cut her hair.
Oh, but it's Sigourney Weaver, so you'll take what you can get.
Sigourney Weaver's awesome.
She's so good in this.
I love her.
Oh, and she's just...
Yeah, she's good. They have legit chemistry. Like, I buy in. And you don't actually see them kiss till the very end of the film, which is like arguably my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, and again, I do not want to talk about the film that shall not be named, but Sydney Ellen Wade also had short hair.
She did.
Yeah.
And also the film that should not be named, Michael Douglas was also the president.
Yes.
Who is in love with a woman with short hair.
Yes. Who was sort of a lobbyist. And as far as I always think like a way to spread out the presidency, because the job has gotten too big, is you need, I don't think Jeremy Suri said that you needed a prime minister, which is like where the sort of the track, like the screechings started on like very good reviews and like a great sort of impression of the book. And then it's like, wait, what? We sort of fought like a whole war about that. But I do think he had some really good points. Which is, the president's gotten so big, you need to like outsource some things more. And I think Biden has done a good job of that. He has a lot of he's deputized a lot of people and really like put a lot of power. He's not micromanaging everyone. But first ladies, they are all very smart for the most. I can actually just immediately some exceptions came to mind.
Can you give me? Oh, I can give you my exceptions to that smart first lady thing. But do you want to give me your favorite first lady?
I don't want to say so. Okay, so
everybody does a favorite presidents. I don't.
We won't say smart, but we'll say invested in America. So we'll just go straight for because I kind of want to reclaim patriotism just as like a side project. This is a little thing.
Oh my God! Please, thank you. Are we taking the flag back tonight?
I literally have an essay coming out in Esquire about a flag, about taking back the flag.
Oh, I'm pitching Esquire on a piece.
Sorry, they're all full with historians. No, I'm kidding.
No,
there can only be one. No, you've been kidding.
I know.
What was I don't even know. So, first ladies that you should give them jobs when they're really smart and often speak many languages and have multiple degrees and are much smarter than their husbands. And something that Sigourney Weaver, her passion project, as they're often described as, is, it's called homeless, that now we would say unhoused people. And also what's funny about this, as an aside, is another thing that would not work today is they go to visit a homeless shelter and they're like, David's like, oh my God, there are only children here. This is like not what I expected. And everyone's black, like all the homeless people, everyone. And it's just, and it's like, oh my God. But they do a lot of that too really well. But Sigourney Weaver does not seem like someone who is just doing this because it was like she picked from a hat. I think there's the implication that she had worked in this field before, as many first ladies had, and that, so it's sort of like Hillary Clinton with healthcare. That was for me a formative presidency. Like Al Gore got me into the environment. I was president of the Ecology Club for 3 years. So sort of, like FDR, I just took that third term. And then they had to come up with term limits. I'm not even kidding. It was uncontested, I will say, though. However, I won, except for 1 year when Brian, this boy I had a crush on, ran against me, and I crushed him. And then he asked Jenny Landris to the dance. So it was a bummer.
Did Brian end up going off to become a speechwriter in DC?
No, I think he's a teacher. He might be a history teacher, actually. I don't remember.
Throwing out.
I feel you. Yeah, so. Yeah. So I found that really.
Oh my God! Yeah. Can I tell you something? I just had a podcast we just recorded. We haven't released it yet on Robin Hood, and I think half the time I talked about like watching that movie and trying and listening to. You remember the song for Robin Hood, the Bryan Adams song?
Yes.
Right.
Bryan
Everything
Adams.
I do. Like I was talking about
slow dancing.
Oh, well, I was like. Miranda Coles go out with me, and she would not.
She would not, of course.
Because she was in love with Jeremy Long, the saxophone player, and I, in the trombone line, was not doing it for her. So,
well, but Lisa Simpson played the sax, and that sort of like none of us could really see past that. It's pretty hot.
Yeah, tough. All right. Yes. So, do you buy? Okay. Oh wait, we still haven't gotten to our first ladies. Who do you like, first ladies?
First ladies. Who do I like? I think that people don't give, no one gives women enough credit, but particularly first ladies. Obviously, if we're not going to go in chronological order, but I'll start at the bottom and go to the top. Obviously, Abigail Adams. I think Louisa Adams doesn't get as much credit as she deserves. God, I hate to say this.
Do it.
I don't want anything to do with her. She's a terrible person, but you have got
endorse her right now.
You've got to hand it to the political maneuverings of Sarah Polk, James K. Polk's wife. She was
Those were
in
just
it.
Not words I expected to ever hear in my life.
She was in it. Well, I think is it Greenberg wrote a good book about the Mexican-American War, which is another thing that I've always wanted to write about, and my agent was like, absolutely not.
There's no taste for Mexican-American War? Wait till I start some shit here in Pueblo. We're going to get going.
It's pretty annoying. I will say that I was in this thing called Frontiersmen, and I used this line. It's a documentary that was on the History Channel, and I used a line in it about like something.
Wait. Are you talking about the Men Who Built America, Frontiersmen?
Yeah. The Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh yeah. I know. I used to teach that shit.
I got to talk my heart. I got to talk about the Mexican American War so much, and of course they only used like 3 minutes, but it was so exciting for me. I've never had that kind of freedom. I've never known that kind of joy.
Just put that on the dating thing. Be like,
yeah.
Do you like the Mexican-American War? How are you about the Treaty of Guadalupe? What is it? Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo?
Mm-hmm. I have, on my dating app, I'm looking for the one, and it's Wi-Fi names. And then I have like, the American router illusion, Henry Kissinger must die-fi, things like that. I don't really get that many good responses. Just like, whoa, this is really funny.
That's
I'm sorry. But usually, who's your favorite president? Which is the question every man alive asks me.
I'm not going to ask you that. I'm going to ask you other things like, who's your favorite?
Who's your favorite first lady? Okay, yes, this is back to this. So, okay, so then we've got Eleanor, and I actually know one of the descendants, Perrin, Ireland, who's an artist.
Really, Eleanor's. Okay, so people would ask me, who's your favorite Roosevelt? And I'm like, Eleanor.
Obviously. The Hyde Park, so I go there all the time. I go there for walks. They have great trails. But I also, until recently, they had a World War II exhibition. So I would go all the time because I'm working on Kennedy, and it's just nice to walk around. And they have below, like, just the best Eleanor exhibition because it has all her different, like, IDs and her books and her weird hobbies, and just she was I would have been obsessed with her. Like, I would have tried to be her best friend. I've never considered stalking anyone, but I would have stalked Eleanor Roosevelt. I'm pretty sure I couldn't have handled it. Or I just would have been her private secretary.
I'm going to use that as the blurb for this.
I would have, 100%. I would have stalked Eleanor Roosevelt. Okay, so we'll keep going. Then obviously Jackie. The thing about Jackie is she's so smart, and think about this, right? Like, she got the French to be respectful and kind to us in public about arts and culture. The Mona Lisa came to America. It's never left France.
Is that Jackie's doing?
Yes, she did that. And she did a lot of really neat things. She had a dinner at Mount Vernon, which hadn't really been done in a while, and it was really smart the way she arranged it. She restored the White House in a way that, Trump called it, a dump. It was. I was
going to say, in a way that only since the Trumps have only recently restored. I mean, Melania, thank God. I mean,
well, Melania did so much. The Rose Garden was Bunny Mellon, who. And she ripped it out. That was the Kennedys. But so I think Jackie deserves a lot more. And she also was raising children in this fishbowl. And I have a 4-year-old. And when I read about some of the things that she did to make life normal for them, it's like during the pandemic, I organized a soccer league. I did all these things that were just so arduous, but were important for a sense of normalcy and development. That she was thinking about that then. And, she started a school in the White House. So she had all sorts of different kids come. But then I love that she took them trick-or-treating just on the streets by buying the equivalent of whatever CBS was then, just really cheap costumes. And they all went out in public and nobody knew. So there's just lots of stories like that. And then you keep going. Betty Ford is great. Her, talking about her mastectomy brought breast cancer into the public forum before we could all identify what pink, ribbons were. And then we can just keep going. With the exception of Melania, they've been, pretty great, I would say, and maligned and put upon and disrespected and denied any sort of autonomy or dignity, just to put it mildly.
Well, to be fair, Michelle Obama did wear a sleeveless dress.
Yeah.
So she probably...
I can't even, when I think about some of that and I think about Malia and Sasha and just what a lovely, natural, comfortable family they were and what great role models they were for us. This is another... But I get frustrated by so many things in presidential history, but this idea that families, which are often not at all perfect, have to be presented as perfect. People bent over backwards, turnout, etc., to say that Washington, whose father died when he was young, that he'd been raised by his half brother, because they denied, they couldn't handle the complexity of trying to understand a woman or what it meant to be a woman in the era. They had just absolutely no curiosity about it. No curiosity. It's not even like, oh no, I don't want to. I'm evil. I'm going to fight this narrative. I want to keep women oppressed. It's that they just had no curiosity. And they denied him this great American story, right? Wouldn't it be wonderful if children learned that Washington was not only raised by a single mother, but he is a great American story. He's the first great American story, not because he was this like wealthy man of, on the Potomac, but because he's the grandson of an indentured servant. His mother was orphaned around the same age, was raised by a neighbor. She married. She decided she would not remarry in order to defend what little her children had left, because they were the second family. Washington's father had been married before, and his oldest sons inherited almost everything. And I also think she just wanted some fucking peace in her life. I just have to imagine that. But I just think, like, what a great American story. And Gerald Ford, maybe
who you've been posting about a little bit recently.
Yeah, a little steamy. He's and you have to remember, I've been spending now years of my days with Kennedy. Ford is easy on the eyes. He is. And everyone, when I tell you that I posted something thinking that everyone's going to get mad at me, like that time that I posted Wilson's dirty letters and poetry, and everyone was like, I didn't need to see that. I'm sorry, you did need to see that Wilson once wrote that he was going to prepare yourself. What did he say? He was going to perform sex onto someone. It was like the beautiful performance of sex onto you. Ford is a good-looking man.
I just want a coffee table book of presidential sex talk. Is really like I want to hear about. There are stories about LBJ enough but
someone did that, but it wasn't good. It was sort of like the sex lives of the founding fathers, or something like that. Sex lives of presidents. It just like wasn't interesting, and it ended up just perpetuating myths. Saying like, well, there's rumors of this, very like sort of bad Kennedy books.
Yeah. No, so I saw the Ford pictures he posted. And like when I used to teach, I would show students pictures of young Ronald Reagan.
Oh, very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Although I'm more, Nixon on the football team makes me question myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
These are not questions. We've never had any female presidents yet, so I haven't had the chance to, I guess, engage in this dialogue yet. I mean, I hope there's time.
Yes.
I don't know. So, but no, Ford played football at Michigan, right?
He did. He was, in high school, he was, all American, all star. And there are a couple, they, as with all presidential history, there was a black man on his team who at one point a team refused to play against. And they're like, well, Ford, he said he wasn't going to play either until his teammates convinced him to, and then he did. And then he turns out, he didn't mention civil rights at all during his inauguration. So, I mean, he's not great, but he is a feminist, and there are certain pockets of understanding and progressiveness that are in him. And some of it is that he was raised by his mother, left his father 16 days after he was born. Oh, so I should preface this by saying that I am talking about Ford because I'm working on this fellowship project, How Should a President Be? And I'm doing sort of background. Those will be public conversations. They'll be really, I'm having people, my goal is to get out of my echo chamber. So I will, I'm going to talk to some people Jamel Bowie and I are doing a TikTok live. Kevin Cruz and I are doing something, but I'm also doing something like OSU. And I want to talk to people, artists, other people who I want to talk to stakeholders, environmental experts and indigenous, rights advocates, like people who you just do not see me having the same conversations with all the time. But I'm doing background, which is an opportunity to talk about presidents who I don't get to talk about a whole lot. But then sometimes people start, I talked earlier about how books happen, and seeds are planted, and I just sort of start circling these people for years. I'm now afraid that's happening with Ford, because I realized that this is like the third thing I've written about him. I wrote something for Slate about him being primaried by Reagan. I wrote something for Town and Country about how he predicted that we would have a woman president, but only after we had a woman vice president, because the president would die and she would ascend to the presidency. But he said after that, men are fucked. Like, we will only have women presidents.
Wow.
But so Ford was raised, his mother leaves his father because he is abusive. And his parents seemingly support this because they pay her child support until they die. And then that stops. And she remarries. He's born Leslie King Jr. And she remarries Ford. And Gerald Ford of, Michigan, raises our future president as his own. And and he says that he's sort of new. Like he said something through inference and innuendo, I think, are the words that he used. But he's not told. And I think, again, like, this is a great American story. And the fact that he was talking about this on like the Cavett show very casually, no shame, must have been like Ford and Betty Ford. The things that they talked about in public were so important for people to see at that time for America that it, again, just makes me like, that's what was great about Dave. Yeah, but Ford played. So I learned he played football. He was a great athlete. He tripped once. So in presidential history, he's gone down as like kind of clumsy. But he's actually
the Saturday Night Live thing kind of damned him.
Yeah,
didn't it?
did. And he was known as Mr. Nice Guy. Isn't that funny? So he spent 25 years in the House of Reps, and I think for either 7 or 9. This is so funny. We're talking about a Republican, and I will admit that I know some of that. I mean, obviously, I fuck with Federalists, but I don't know Republicans quite as well. Sometimes when I say, like, was it 7 or 9 years? And also, just as an aside, when Kennedy was being shopped around, it's a 1-book deal, but a bunch of places wanted a 2-book deal, and they wanted me to write. They kept coming back to the same presidents. It was crazy. It was like they all got together in a corner. Because they're from different imprints, but it was always Reagan, Clinton, people I would not spend years with these men. These are years of my life. Absolutely not. I want to fling them into the sun. So so he's basically like Ford is, he's experienced, and he also can work with people in a way that I had not expected, but he was never on the ticket. People forget another, Spiro Agnew, that whole administration. Yeah, really. Like, just plagued. And then, so he's unelected to the vice presidency, then he's unelected to the presidency. It's fascinating to watch. But he didn't have a plan. Like, he couldn't. Some people should never rise above a certain rank. We all know this in life.
I can name a couple.
Yeah, we all know this in life. Either it's because they're evil or because they just are not prepared. And maybe if Ford had some more time, he didn't get a lot of notice. It all happened very quickly. It was difficult. I would say that he should be remembered in a better light if it weren't for the whole pardon thing.
Ford had an there is no way Ford beats Jimmy Carter.
Oh,
and he still came close.
Even if he wasn't primaried, which people who are primaried, they limp out of those conventions. But
sure.
And it wasn't a landslide. He didn't win by a ton.
No.
And it's interesting because, Ford is Mr. Nice Guy. Jimmy Carter, I have often thought of as being kind of too good of a person for the presidency. But I think that Carter did things that Ford would never do. Like when Carter was governor, for example, he was not above race baiting. He was not above a bunch of things. Whereas I don't think Ford would do that. But I don't know. We're still getting to know each other.
I think Carter's presidency obviously is about to get majorly revisited.
Yes, I know. I'm on call still.
Once he dies.
They still text me.
Are you really?
I've been on call for months. Because of course, he's got the longest post-presidency in American history. He's going to have the longest hospice. Everyone underestimates him.
Is he maybe the second greatest, maybe arguably the greatest former president ever?
I think what's the arguably?
John Quincy Adams, maybe?
Okay. Yeah, that's I think it's hard to compare them because
it is, but we can do it anyway.
We can do it anyway because Carter has had a greater reach and more of a global sensibility. But I would say that what they have in common is they are what I love to see it public servants.
Mm-hmm.
They are here for the greater good. There is something innate in them that makes them keep working. And we can, the fallback of the presidential historian is to be like, well, the mother and the father. And you can argue for Carter. His mother was a great influence and his father was, the antidote, or he was working against his father and wanted to be more like his mother, who was a nurse, who it was the time of the hobos, invited them. I don't know. I think everyone makes their own choices in the end.
Can we imagine if we got to read about other historians? Like,
I do.
In the way
oh my goodness. I mean, I don't really, I try to stay out of it until someone's like really offensive, like Chernow. But I mostly said about, for Kennedy, I'm not going after, when I tell you that, when I talk to someone who's a male historian now, who's written about someone who I am writing about, the fear in their voices.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They're either they don't want to talk to me, or, I mean, they mostly do. They're so defensive or scared that I'm going to come after them and give them a funny, give them a silly title. I have to tell them that we're cool, like that it's fine.
That you're good, that they're safe for now?
Yeah, I mean, the Washington bros were ridiculous. No one compares.
Until they bring up the film that shall have no name.
Yes, of course.
Which we can still talk about. I want to talk about it.
Fine, let's talk about it. We're done with Dave.
Let's talk about the American president. Are we done? No, I have one more question for you for Dave.
Okay.
Are Dave and Ellen still together? This is a new thing that I'm starting to ask because I'm finding that I am a ridiculous romantic and I want to believe that people still make it. But what are your thoughts? Are Dave and Ellen still hanging?
Well, I like the perspective because it's not like it's not like they were each other's first loves. That's what was sort of nice to see. They were, I don't know, how old are they there? They're probably younger. They'll be like 28
in that film, but maybe he's goofy. You know what?
Will you look
it
up?
Phone somewhere.
How will we ever figure this out?
All we have is the entirety of the human experience right
at our fingertips.
Let's look at Wikipedia because that's where I'm going to go.
I love to see fully grown humans, like real adults who know who they are, who have lived a little, who have loved and lost, come together. So I'm rooting for them. But I really, again,
born in 47.
I don't know how this is going to work out once he runs for office, if they stay together and people realize the ex-first lady is now married to the guy who impersonated the president while the world was still happening.
Okay. Let's assume they don't get noticed.
Sure.
He's 46 in this movie.
Okay, that makes me feel okay.
She's 44 in this film.
So she's older than me, but she's not that much older. And I couldn't place her. It's hard to place goals. She looks really good.
Yeah.
I mean, she's Sigourney Weaver.
She looks amazing.
There's a lot of raw energy between them. I will agree with you there. There's something, they're in the limo at some point, and the subtlety, because when there's a film like this, you think it's going to be like a sort of schmackty acting, right? Is that the schmackty, right?
Well, they're both really good at their craft.
But they're so good, and but they're good when they're goofy, and they're good when they're flirting, but it's very subtle, and it's like a little bit hot. And they're in the back of a limo, and he glimpses at her legs, and she catches him. But it's not a big thing. She's acting with her eyes. She's acting with her eyes, and she's doing it well. So they had enough energy, like there was enough raw sexual energy, I think, to last a few decades.
Oh, I mean, he was nude in the shower in front of her. We were forgetting that.
And somehow that's not when she realized. That I don't buy.
That is a cosmic analysis. I mean, I can guess that maybe the man looks uncannily like the former president.
Identical. Although they had a very bad marriage. And so maybe she just didn't even look.
Well, okay, so their marriage with the original president had been turned into a political partnership.
Yes.
Right?
Barely.
Where it's clear they had and she knew that he was bedding many other young staffers or whomever.
Yes.
She didn't have anything else on the side, apparently.
Well, we don't get to women are not.
The idea you get.
Her life is she is a mirror onto which
Right.
we see men, which is what they always are. They are adhering to the standards of presidential biographies. She is just there when she is somehow interacting with them. She has no other life. She has no other needs or desires aside from what we've seen, which is maybe some kind of relationship, though she is not begging for it by any means. She's not a wounded bird. And
she's fine with that.
Homeless people. Those are her passions in life. And then later, Dave.
All right. So are they still together?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Do they get found out?
Yes, immediately.
Are they pen pals in prison? Because they both knew he was breaking the law.
They're pardoned for love.
Oh. Okay.
In the name of love. And there's like a ballad about it by Meatloaf. Because
by Peter Cetera.
The time. Okay. I don't remember as much.
I'm older.
I'm a
Karate Kid Part 2?
I'm an older millennial. So I remember Karate Kid, and I have an older brother who's 44.
Right. So the I am the man, I am your man is shine that song. Who I thought I wanted Daniel and Kimiko to still be together. So when they came back with the Karate Kid show, when they weren't together, kind of hurt.
Yeah. I mean, as long as I just want them to be happy.
All right.
I also like that they were childless.
It doesn't work because kids will find out. You can't hide shit from a kid.
And also they'll just like kill the vibe. Like you're not gonna have like if they're talking about like what gross thing a kid did or rain boots or who's gonna coach soccer, like that is not that movie anymore.
No, because half of your conversations revolve around the kids.
But it was surprising. It wasn't surprising that Dave didn't. Like, it wasn't surprising that Kevin Kline didn't have a kid. But it was surprising that the president did not have a kid.
Well,
who does he think he is? A Polk, a Buchanan?
He's far into himself. He probably got the snip like early on. He's like, I'm not having those attachments. Although he seems cold-blooded enough to understand that children would have improved his likability in the polls.
Yeah.
And therefore looks good. So
you couldn't have that now.
Maybe there was something going on.
Not with the birth rate and with the evangelicals.
You
couldn't have a childless president, I don't think.
Does Kamala have any children?
She's a mamala.
Right? She's right.
Yeah, she's a stepmother. Which got a lot of if she God forbid, et cetera, if she ascends to the presidency, it will be talked about a lot, I'm sure. And it was talked about a lot.
Yeah, I seem to remember, like, I think I follow her. She's got two stepdaughters?
She's got a totally acceptable stepson and a very cool stepdaughter.
I follow the stepdaughter on Twitter.
I think I follow her on Instagram.
I follow cool people and also people I hate on Twitter. So,
yeah.
I've got a couple guys that I just can't stand that I trolled one of them today, but
someone's got to do it.
I was in a mood. I'm not that guy. I'm not Kevin Cruz. I'm like, the trees are pretty here. You guys like turtles?
Do you know I'm to blame for him a little bit?
For Kevin?
Yeah, because Kevin, I interviewed before he was on Twitter for The Atlantic, and he was in a couple articles, and then I saw him in San Francisco at, I want to say AHA or something. And we talked about Twitter and I said, you have to get on Twitter. And when he joined, he remembers this part. He put a red rose as his profile picture. He had a red rose. Kevin Cruz.
What? Why?
King of Twitter had a red rose. And I was like, Kevin, 1, there's a banner. You need your book. 2, we need to see your face. And then what can I say? He was off to the races.
He owes me a pod, by the way. I'm holding a movie for him that he said he wanted to do, and no one else has asked for it, so I haven't had to deny them on it yet. But like Raising Arizona.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. But anyway.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
The American president. Why do you love it? Let's go. Let's go into the movie that now has a name.
Yes.
And tell me about why American President. Is American President your favorite film ever?
It is, I think, a formative movie as a child. I remember really loving it. I still feel really good about it. I curated, this was another thing that didn't happen because of the pandemic, but a couple years before the pandemic, I curated the ACLU Centennial, which was supposed to be a traveling exhibition. And, there's that Dukakis line about being a card-carrying member. And you can listen to the audio, you can listen to the transcript, you can listen to the audio and you can read the transcript at the JFK Library for some reason. Oh, because he was on with Kennedy. And he was on the radio show with Kennedy. And Dukakis is like, doesn't really say it in the same way, but Shepard gives this incredible speech where he's like, he's talking to a Republican who's trying to drag him, I think, or being primated. And he said something like, Bob, and Bob is played by, that other actor from the Dreyfuss.
Richard Dreyfuss.
Yeah, Richard Dreyfuss, who has a son who's a Raider. Ben Dreyfuss. And, Richard Dreyfuss
is a Raider?
Yeah, Ben Dreyfuss. He used to be at, or maybe he's still at Mother Jones. He's great.
Oh, I thought you said he was a Raider, like a football player. I was like, really?
No, he's like a tiny,
It's like, Alexis doesn't do sports ball.
No, I don't know. I don't know any sports people. And only
What's a Raider?
Yeah, absolutely not. No one on the field, at least. I know people who've accidentally ended up at ESPN. But he, so he's evil, and he accused Shepard of being a member of the ACLU. My God, how dare you help Nazis march on Jewish neighborhoods? And, and said he was liberal, blah, blah, blah. And people forget what the ACLU does. And that most of the cases upset us all. So he goes, Shepard, the reason it's such a good movie is Shepard delivers what we want from every president, which is just great oratory. He gives good speech, and he says sure. I'm a card-carrying member of the ACLU, and I've got a question, Bob. Why aren't you? And he goes, and he's just so good, and everyone around him is so good, and it fulfilled my childhood fantasy of what the White House is like. And then you have Sidney Allen Wade, who comes in.
Stunning in this movie.
Stunning. I mean, and she just is so beautiful. But
look how old she is.
She's a little bit actually, maybe I've just modeled this after her, but, like me sometimes, kind of awkward or makes weird jokes or doesn't always read the room. She's feral in a way that I am, because I haven't worked in an office since 2012, and that office was called the New York Public Library, where literally when I left, my boss was like, it's good you're getting out before you're as weird as everyone else. So when people are left to their own devices, they're strange. And I think she's like that. She's so funny. She's so elegant. And she cares about the environment before anyone else, right? She's way ahead of the curve. And as I said, that spoke to my agenda at the time as the president of the Ecology Club. I also I thought the dogwood was I was ensorcelled by the idea of a dogwood because I grew up in LA and we don't have dogwoods. I was like, it's a tree and a flower. And I was explaining what they were to people.
By the way, would you like to know how old Annette Bening is in the American
God, how old? If you say 35, I'm going to die.
She's 37.
I knew it. I'm older.
She's 37. For those of you playing at home, we are slowly working our way down to Alexis's actual age. So we're now between 44 and 37. I know how old you are because I've seen you post about it, but we're working our way there. So that's the subtle mind games going on over here. You're talking about books. I'm like, all right, numbers.
As I like to say, a lady never talks presidents on the first DM, and never shares ages on the first pod.
Good. All right. Well, maybe we'll have a second.
But it's super public. I have a Wikipedia page which people regularly update with the latest on my love life. So it's all there.
Hold on, just check it out. Looking at the thing that's totally not Wikipedia. So okay, that's what actually made West Wing so good, right? The writing. Aaron Sorkin does the writing, and the other thing I like about this, and we see this actually in contemporary politics in Minnesota, is that for once we saw Democrats get a 1-seat majority in the House and Senate in Minnesota, and they took it to the Republicans. They actually went through all this legislation and forced, the governor of Minnesota's personally calling out the Florida governor saying, yeah, you're burning books and we're feeding kids.
Yeah. It's when they give in the West Wing, after the first term, when he wins re-election, and they're but during the campaign, when they turn to the president and they decide during the debate, And he's running against the governor of Florida. And and they say they talk shit all the time in a way that's just feels like it's about DeSantis. At some point, there's a press conference, and she's like, "What did she say?" She's like, "For fuck's sake, if the president needs to know something like elevated, important situation, he will ask the Republican governor of Florida. Thanks so much."
Yeah.
Like it's so, and they said these things. But they're good people and they're smart. Like nobody wants you to have a beer with them. I don't want to have a beer with the president. The beer is not happening. These presidents don't drink beer. I don't think they drink beer. They have like a cocktail, wine, whatever. They maybe don't even drink. Like they're tie-tie.
Okay, the West Wing makes me want to live in DC. I know you don't like DC, but I
know, but it sort of does.
Makes me want to live in DC at Christmas time.
Half and half.
I want to. Okay, so back to Dave real quick. You know the parts where it's like kind of cold and rainy outside in the late fall?
Yeah.
Pour that shit into my soul.
But what about summer? So this is why when you're like
so hot and nasty.
It's so
I lived
gross.
in Florida and I grew up in Louisiana.
The humidity. I sweat from places I didn't know was possible.
Listen, I'm the most southern man ever. Like I'm from Kentucky and Louisiana and Tennessee, and no, that's I'm done with that.
Yeah.
No, it's hot and gross and like.
So here's my thing with DC now. I don't like because it's awful to see McCarthy sitting next to like David Rubenstein or something at dinner. But this DC I could fuck with, like the West Wing, the like late 90s for sure.
Do you have a favorite character on the West Wing?
Do I have a favorite character? I don't have I kind of like and dislike them all. The men are really accurate, like, and they're great, but like they're innately childish in this way that I understand because they want two things at once that they can't have. They want normalcy and they want a relationship and they want love and excitement and all these things that we all want. At the same time, they are married to this job and that is the level of intensity one needs.
Well, the Leo line when he's talking to his wife.
Yes.
Right. This job is more important than my marriage right now. It has to be more important than my marriage, right?
And at that moment, I have to tell you, I was with him. I was on his side because I'm like,
I am too.
28 years. He's been working for this his entire life. What the president needs him. There
are going to be points, and here's the reality. In relationships, there are going to be points and times when the relationship isn't the most important thing, and you're kind of signing on this contract where you're just like, I'm in this for the long. If you're like Leo and his wife, she would have known what she was getting. Leo was always this way when he was a businessman or in office earlier or anything like that. And there was this like, we got to the presidency. We made it to the hilltop. It's 4 years, 8 years. That's what this has to be.
Yeah, I mean,
now.
he missed, I think the breaking point was he missed an anniversary dinner or like theater tickets or something. And it's like, oh, come on. Yeah. Oh, come on. And then I heard something recently where Sorkin was saying that early on Toby was wearing a wedding ring in a scene. And he realized this after they had already filmed a little bit. And so he's like, oh shit, like, do we have to refilm? You know, what's going to happen? And he talked to Toby and it's weird because he didn't seem mad. Whereas like, I imagine it's the way Sorkin tells it, he's not mad, but in my mind, he's like, what the? And he said like, I didn't see him married. And Toby said, I didn't either, but he wishes he still was. Because he's married to the job. And that was the thing, like they get the roles. And it's the same thing. I have another friend who recently left her job to go work at the White House. And like her whole life looks like this now. And like marriage is in peril. You know, I haven't been able to see her anytime I go to DC, and I go all the time for like New America or to give a talk or I lecture at universities, whatever. I like it's almost comical. Like I like to still text these people because this is never going to happen, but they think it's going to happen and they go in so earnestly. And that's the thing. You have to pay attention to how earnest they are when they make the plans and when they try to say like, stick with me, they mean it. But they've got one chance at the country. One chance at
this is the peak. This doesn't happen again.
And it's crazy. And like Washington is nuts.
Okay, so CJ and
right, when CJ. They finally get Wait, don't ruin it. I actually have not finished. I'm on the fourth season and it came out when I was in high school, so I didn't see it. And I'm not a modern presidency person until recently. I've actually just like avoided it.
A West Wing podcast. You're coming back.
Oh, totally. I am in it. Like I watch it all the time. I watch 5 minutes a day when I can.
I won't say anything else. I won't say anything other than.
So don't tell me who she ends up with.
No, I'm not.
She had a thing with the journalist.
I can't say it. You have to stop talking now because I can't ruin it.
All right.
Because all I will say is that my favorite character started as Josh.
Okay.
And then it changes over.
But Josh and Dawn are going to get together, right? I mean, that's obvious.
I can't talk about the scene that I've watched 100 times over and over again.
Okay. But also the sexism is insane. They're just like, oh, colleague, I really like you in a tight, short skirt. Let me touch your butt.
And Josh's sex life is like completely up for grabs. Everybody, it's just like the talk of the office, right?
Oh yes, there's there's like a website about it. But you know when it feels so like, oh, this was on forever ago, and then they'll say something like, just order it from Amazon.
I'm doing the math. Where are you? Season 4?
Yes, exactly.
Jesus. All right, hold on. That's 5, 6, 7, that's 22, that's 66 hours.
I'll be done in like a week. So, no.
You've got roughly 80 hours to go, so I'm gonna,
Okay.
So if you're in spare time, if you could knock that out by like Sunday, that'd be great.
Yeah, all my spare time.
Your spare time.
My spare time.
You have spare time, right?
Sure.
You're a working mom.
Yeah.
You have.
I just have 9 jobs.
I don't know how you do it. Like right now with writing the book, being a mom, being the presence that you are, because I see you bouncing around all over God's creation.
Well, look, I will say it looks more active than it is always, but I'm doing probably the least amount. I've said, this is the end. I haven't done a book talk in a couple weeks, and I'm not going to do one again until I think February, March is my next one. That's my next speaking engagement. So this is the time where I'm allegedly finishing a book. And so I have sort of protected the space a little bit, but I'm still, everything is an emergency. I still have to go on TV. I still have to give commentary. I still have to, and I do servicey things too. I do a lot of like mentorship, talking to teens and like women historians who want to do the kind of work that I do. I'm
trying to find something where I get called in on an emergency on TV. I'm like, can you identify this turtle? Like, would that be
you have some competition though. There are there's an early Americanist who's written about turtles.
Yeah, I talked to her early on.
She's good. She's very funny.
Yeah. I set the record for most turtle saves in the state of Florida 2 years in a row. I did 2 master's theses. 132 was my best.
Fine, you'll be
like out of the.
You'll be one of 2 turtle people I call.
Yeah, well,
when I'm like, I can't speak to turtles, but I can if a producer calls me. But I can tell you to.
No one's going to ask me about my own research, which is about Florida, because God knows Florida's not important in our dialogue.
Not at all relevant.
Well, also Florida, okay, it's 1750, probably not quite as much as we're going for, but that's okay. So, all right, I wanted to ask you about this Laura Linney, Kevin Bacon thing you wanted to do.
Oh, no, I haven't done it, but we could do it. Like, I haven't done it in my mind, but as I was saying it, it sounded really good, which is that Laura Linney, so she was in Dave, and then when I saw her, I was, amazed. She's so young, and then remembered that she had been in the John Adams series.
She's maybe my favorite part of John Adams.
Yeah. And she was in something else too, where she's really
Love Actually, but that's just
no, some other
actually all day long.
Period piece where she is in the White House. So like I just feel like you could do something with Laura Linney because she's an actor too, so she'll take the period dramas.
Okay. Is Dave a period drama now?
Oh God. No.
Come on, we can watch this movie and think about 1993 when you were a young child between the ages of X and Y, and I was 6 years older.
I think it's 7.
No, it's not.
I
will compare off camera.
It's I don't. No, it's not a period drama. Did they have cell phones? Maybe that's the way we figure it out.
No,
there was no car phone. There was no scene with a car phone.
There is. Remember, whenever the first guy gets the stroke, when the first person has a stroke, and they tell Ving, who we have not talked about, Ving Rhames.
Oh my God, yeah,
right. That whole the line towards the end, like I would have taken a bullet for you.
Oh my God, that broke my heart. And the way he said his delivery was amazing.
It's Ving Rhames. You know, this comes out in 93 and 1 year later, he's in Pulp Fiction.
He just jumped from that to Pulp Fiction?
He goes from that to Marcellus Wallace in Pulp Fiction. What
a career.
All right, let me ask you that. I don't want to keep you like here all night. Big question.
Nobody's going to listen to this. It's so long.
Are you kidding me? It's awesome. Please. We're $1.42 into this. I've had longer podcasts. I mean, granted, it was like when I was talking about Gangs of New York, and we were like, so what's it like to work with Scorsese? But I think people are going to be much more interested in like, all right, so what's the worst line you've gotten? Is Dave a history film?
I don't know if it's it's presidential history. We're a young country is always my line. So why not? It's all recent-ish. I think it works. For me, it's definitely presidential history. It's recent. It's modern presidential history.
I think it's scary how much foretelling is like the business relationship between Sigourney Weaver and Kevin Kline.
Yeah.
Also, right, the vice president, right?
Portrayed. Oh, but there's
by
a
Ben
lot of
Kingsley.
Oh, Ben Kingsley. Oh, and
he's so sweet.
They're so sweet. So they don't have like, and this is, I guess, where you are getting a little bit of that President Shepard, the American president goodness happening. But it's in one person.
President Shepard. Come on.
Yes, I know. It's ridiculous.
It's a little bit like, and the name Shepard gets used like all.
It gets all, and sometimes I love him. He's so smart. He's so good, but he is exhausting. When there's some meeting with the Joint Chiefs of Staff and he's just like, zinger, zinger, zinger. And I'm like, just chill out, man. Like, take a hit. Like, relax.
My hard part is I can't. Okay, first of all, I have two things. First, Martin Sheen as the Chief of Staff is hard for me to see because I'm so used to seeing with Jed Bartlett.
Yeah.
I can't not see him as Jed Bartlett.
Yeah.
And then Michael J. Fox, who I have a special place in my heart because I love Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
It hurts to see Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
Knowing, because I think his Parkinson's starts to show up shortly thereafter, if I'm correct.
Yeah. Which is a pretty early onset. It's pretty devastating.
He's amazing. The way he's handled this in the public. I don't know what it's like in his personal life.
Yeah.
I couldn't blame him if it's just been hell for him. But the way he is. Anyway, okay. So Dave's history film.
I think it's a history film, but I think Ben Kingsley, we should encourage people to pay attention because we haven't given him his due. And he is just a good man. He's just a good man. Doing good.
Why'd you do it?
And it's a fantasy because it's like a Chester A. Arthur fantasy.
I've never had one of those.
Does that not track? I'm sorry, that doesn't track. That's not your particular kink. So it is.
No, but it's going on your Wikipedia page soon.
So he ascends to the presidency. I know, totally. And her kink is Chester A. Arthur. So Chester A. Arthur, who like very much was from the like Roscoe Conklin, New York machine, ascends to the presidency after there's an assassination. And everyone thinks it's just, as an aside, had for some reason 40 pairs of pants and like 3 shirts. I would not go that route, but you do you. So he ascends to the presidency. He takes the oath of office in Murray Hill, which nobody should do in Manhattan. It's like where finance bros live. And everyone thinks it's just going to be nothing but grifts. And he doesn't do that. He turns it around. And that is essentially, I mean, not to these like Herculean levels, not to Hollywood's, standards, but that is what we see. We get glimpses of Ben Kingsley and he like goes on to be everything people projected onto Obama.
Do you want a Chester Arthur film? And who do we cast as Chester Arthur?
I don't know. There's so many I want. I would actually want I would loan a James A. Garfield.
You just said the best words ever. I am such a Garfield fanboy.
Look, those 4 months, so much could have happened. It was the most promising 4 months of any of the 5 shortest presidencies.
To
put it in context,
Garfield looks like he would have been our guy. I mean, it's the great what if for presidency.
He's the one that got away. I had him, he was the focus of Steady Mary Kill I realized July when I went to go write this one.
Okay.
He was the last one, and he's one of those I could just keep learning about.
I think he's fascinating. I want to read the Millard book on him.
It's so good. It is really good. She's very good. She's a great writer. She's a great writer. Really good. And she focuses on her, she has an approach. It's not like she's doing, as I do almost always, like, I either focus on a large part of the life or cradle to casket. We have to think of a better way to say that. But
cradle to legacy.
Cradle to, yeah.
Infancy to legacy.
Oh my goodness.
Something.
What would the Trumpian version of it be?
I have worked so hard to not, I do impressions of most of our presidents. I have worked so hard to not have to do a Trump one. And I am,
yes.
I'm fighting back my Clinton one right now. So
I understand.
Go.
I understand.
Garfield.
Yeah. I would, who would play him? He was also good looking.
I got one.
Who?
Joel Edgerton.
Who's Joel Edgerton?
Joel Edgerton's great.
Have you? I'm 20 years behind on everything. Have you not? I'm watching The West Wing. I thought you were saying
20 years younger than me. Joel Edgerton is an Australian actor because that's where they make all the best actors.
That is unpatriotic of you. Okay, but can you continue?
That's correct. But I'm taking back the Australian flag as a sign of patriotism. Actually, my neighbor was like, "Is that a Commonwealth of Kentucky flag outside your house?" I was like,
gosh.
This is an embassy, dude. You walk in this house, there's bourbon, sweet tea, and pecan pie waiting for you. This is.
Yeah.
They made me a Kentucky colonel. I'm like honor bound.
Yeah.
So, do you know about that? Do you know what those are?
I do. My for some odd reason, my paternal grandfather I was raised by my mom, and then my paternal grandparents, and when I was going through my grandfather's stuff after he died, he had a Kentucky colonel hat. And so I looked it up and I was like, what is this story? And I always mean to look into it because, like, how did that happen? I feel like there's a story there.
I'll teach you the handshake one day. I'll be like, this is what we do.
Oh, I love a homosocial world. Put me in it.
All right. We've been going for almost 2 hours. So
yes.
Hey, where do we find you online? On Twitter and everywhere else?
All the places. Twitter, X, I guess. I forgot my login to Blue Sky, so let's not talk about that. Instagram, Substack, Study Mary Kill. I've been playing with
your website.
My website. I think that's it. Wikipedia. A village in upstate New York.
Random.
All the places.
Stores,
yeah.
Anywhere, all the places. And that's a wrap here at Historians of Movies Podcast. Thank you so much to our guest, Alexis Coe, for coming out and talking to us tonight about Dave, the American President, The West Wing. Alexis, you've got 3.5 seasons to watch of The West Wing before we come back. Hurry up so we can do this again soon. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, of course, to our Commander-in-Chief, our Chief of Staff, Fletcher Powell, for being here. You can find him on Twitter or on X or everywhere else at Fletcher_Powell. And thank you, the people, my fellow historians of the movies. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for listening every single week. Thanks for sharing this pod. I just love you guys to death. So, hey, if there's anybody else that you want to have on this podcast, if there are movies that you want on this pod, keep liking and reviewing, subscribing to this pod. Let's get reelected here. Hey, everybody, thank you so much. It's been an absolute blast on this one. Hope you're having a great day. Ciao for now. Bye.